Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
For writers and public personalities, it's becoming increasingly important to have an online presence. This normally takes the form of a website and social media. However, things like a cluttered site or broken links can scare potential readers away. It's time to get a health check. Until the 30th of June, Black Wolf Editorial Services is offering a special website health check package. Get a new bio for your site. Have the site navigation and general layout assessed. Get a review of your Twitter activities. Get an objective opinion about your public Facebook page. Find out what works well and what could potentially scare your readers away. And all this for $35. At the end of the day, the face we put online will be the one that most people will see. Let us help you put your best foot forward. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For full details and a list of other services, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark. The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View. All right, this is Jessie. I am so happy to be back with you guys. You know I miss you when I'm not talking with you. All right, I know, it's Wednesday, the 29th of June. But wait, It's a Wednesday, and I'm not alone. This is the second time in a week I've done this to you guys. I have Colin Clark, who's a political scientist with the RAND Corporation, on with me. He's going to help me discuss the terrorism, what's going on in the Middle East, and all the other tomfoolery that's going on over there. How you doing today, Colin? And thank you so much for joining me.
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
And am I supposed to be calling you Colin or Dr. Clark or...
Colin's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
To be casual.
Hey, awesome. We like to be casual on this show. All right. So, the attack in Turkey. Last I heard, it was 36, 37 killed and 147 wounded.
Yeah, I don't know about the casualty count. I've heard everywhere from mid-30s to as many as 50 killed. We know that there was multiple suicide bombers, one of whom, before he detonated his explosive vest, had used automatic rifle to kill civilians. So yeah, pretty brutal scene. There's a lot of carnage there, and I think as of yet, stability, although the Turkish government has come out and said early indications are that based on the tactics used, that they believe it's ISIS. As we've seen in the past, it could be a range of actors, including Kurdish militants.
Yeah, the PKK. At least I think it's the PKK. Is the one that usually is acting up over there. What's the deal with the Kurds and the Turks?
There's multiple groups.
What is the deal with the Kurds and the Turks? Can you clear that up for my listeners?
The Kurdish minority is advocating for an independent Kurdistan, not only in southeastern Turkey, but across parts of Syria, Iraq, and into Iran. It's an ethnic group that's seeking an independent state, and so it's been agitating against the government and military in Ankara for the better part of the last 3 decades.
All right, and yet the Jews formed Israel. How did the Jews get Israel if the Kurds can't get their own little corner of the world? Other than the fact that Israel's the
we'll have to go back. We'll have to go way back in history there.
I'll tell you what.
I'd recommend Margaret Macmillan's Paris 1919 as a history book to get into some of the details there.
I'll tell you what, we'll schedule another time. I have a Saturday segment called Saturday Slowdown where we delve in depth into such topics. We'll save that one for a Saturday.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Now, it does look similar to the Brussels bombing, even from my outsider looking in perspective. It looked like there were similar tactics and techniques. And that was an ISIS
tactics, techniques, procedures.
So, all right, what is your take on this whole situation? I mean, first of all, the Middle East, let's just face it, it's on fire. Every other day.
And it has been for some time.
Now, do you think we made it more less stable, more radical, more likely to explode when we went into Iraq, took out Saddam, bombed Libya?
Sorry, when you say we, you mean the United States, U.S. military?
The U.S. military took action. Do you think we had an impact in making it less stable? Do you think if things were handled, what we did was okay, but we handled it wrong, like pulling out of Iraq on a set date? Oh, we're going to do a surge, but we're going to leave on X date.
Well, I mean, I think clearly now that we have the benefit of hindsight, going into Iraq in the first place did not really work out too well. So getting rid of Saddam was the easy part, but there was very little plan for what happens next. Folks in the administration denied the fact that there was an insurgency for quite a long time. De-Ba'athification was a disastrous policy. It was basically setting free, dismissing everybody that knew how to use a gun in that country and telling them their services were no longer needed. I mean, if you were a red team and wanted to build an instant insurgency, that would be the best way to do it. And so we got off on the wrong foot, which is probably an understatement, despite the heroic efforts of...
Can you define that one?
Red team. So if you are thinking, putting on your bad guy hat for a second and thinking as if you were the enemy, or as the intelligence community did during various points in the 70s and 80s, trying to foment an insurgency against a communist government.
Thank you. I always try and catch people with the jargon and get them to explain it, because I got a lot of listeners out there that go, "You mean that's really happening? Wait a minute, that can't be true." Yes, that's a real term.
Good catch.
Hey, I may speak military jargon with the best of them, and I knew what it was, but that doesn't mean my listeners do. So, all right, so we certainly didn't help the matter. Now, like I said, outsider looking in, Brussels and on the Ataturk airport looks too similar for it not to be related somewhere down the food chain. Now, ISIS hasn't claimed it.
Well, again, I'd caution against the jumping to conclusions. We still don't know. I mean, the target is an airport, right? But airports are an attractive target all over the world. And so to say that, yes, Brussels has an airport and Istanbul has an airport, but so does every country and every major city. So just because an airport was attacked doesn't mean that the group was the same or that the style was the same. I think I always caution patience in the very first few days of attacks like this to really, sift the signals from the noise and wait to see exactly which group claims responsibility, if any do, because this may go unclaimed.
Why do you think this may go unclaimed?
Actually, the majority of terrorist attacks go unclaimed. Terrorism is a form of political communication for groups to convey their grievances and the cost of ignoring them. But even though in practice groups take responsibility for just a small portion of their attacks, actually, rather than getting credit for the violence, terrorist leaders generally deny that their operatives committed it. Now, that varies from group to group. The essence of terrorism is that it's political violence and usually used to convey a message, but that's not always the case.
It also has the side effect of scaring everybody.
Sure, intimidation, right, to terrorize is certainly one of the intentions.
I mean, I remember after 9/11, there was major panic in this country.
For good reason.
So, all right. So we certainly didn't help by taking out Iraq, Saddam and Iraq. What do you think about what we did with Libya? If Iraq was bad, I think Libya was worse, because at least we made an attempt to straighten Iraq back out. We made an attempt. Libya, we just basically launched a bunch of missiles and said, "Okay, guys, have fun."
Yeah, I would caution against the "we" there, because that was actually led by was a NATO. Well, I mean, it was a NATO operation. That wasn't a U.S.-led mission. So France was in the lead there. So if we're going to point fingers, I think the French certainly.
The U.S. in combination with NATO, in combination with the U.S. and France and other partners, launched a bunch of missiles into Libya. Gaddafi ended up getting killed and his family, and now it's a free-for-all.
Sure. I mean, Libya is a failed state on the Mediterranean, facing numerous challenges. ISIL has now gained a foothold on Libyan territory, and there's a battle for control of the state between various Libyan militias. Certainly, in retrospect, not a well-thought-out operation, although, comparing Iraq to Libya, you could make arguments which was more destabilizing, neither of which have worked out well, to say the least.
True. Do you think the Middle East could ever have democracy like we do?
Well,
do they even
keep
want
in mind, I can't obviously speak for everybody in the region. You'd have to look at some Gallup polling.
I meant based on
the
cultures and the politics and the tribal loyalties.
Yeah, well, one thing we should be careful of doing is treating the Middle East like a monolith, right? I mean, this is various ethnic groups. So you've got Arabs, Persians, others. You've got multiple religions. You've obviously got the Sunni Shia split. You've got the tribal element. That would be like, when people say the West. Well, what does the West mean? We have an idea culturally what it means, but the Middle East as a blanket term is pretty misleading. Now, people often ask me, well, how would you judge, the progress toward democracy after the Arab Spring? And I would say, here in the United States, we've had 200 plus years to get this right. Judging from the time of the Arab Spring, we're talking about 5 years. So it's a bit premature to start handing out report card grades over which country has made progress and which hasn't. So, we've got about a 195-year head start in the United States.
True. And I must say, I think our founding fathers were brilliant the way they set up the system. Although I'm not so sure about some of our political candidates, but that's, I'm just sitting here going, okay, so I can choose between Voldemort and Sauron for president.
I vaguely get the reference. I'm not is that a Harry Potter reference?
Voldemort was the evil character in Harry Potter, and Sauron is the evil character in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So basically, I have the choice between the lesser of two evils.
That's how some Americans feel.
Well, I have to say I'm in that percentage there. All right, so back to the Middle East. But do you really think democracy that's structured like ours could ever work over there? Is there a country that you think it would work better in versus others, or is there do you think the Kurds will ever?
Let me turn the question. Let me turn the question to you. Why couldn't it?
The cultural differences, their loyalties are to family, tribe first in a lot of cases. Whereas, I know there's quite a number of Americans that say, God, country, family. So I happen to be surrounded by a ton of them. Yeah,
it might be the same in the Middle East, right? Except God would be called Allah. Maybe not country, but then tribe, then clan. I'm not sure that. Certainly, there's a lot of cultural differences. And look, I mean, our democracy is generally more stable than authoritarian dictatorship, sure. But I think there's probably a lot of people out there that would trade a democratic Iraq to have Saddam back. I think both Iraqis and Americans was Saddam a good guy? Far from it. But there was clearly more stability in Iraq. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq during Saddam's time. There was no ISIS. I think, certainly he was a nefarious actor and someone that was, he had invaded Kuwait. He had fought the Iranians for 8 years. But again, since 2003, Iraq's been a bastion of instability, and it's been exporting terrorism and insurgency throughout the region, throughout the world. Much the same for Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a terrible person, really bad guy, but by and large, Libya was stable. And so it's often be careful what you wish for; you just might get it. When we go and we think about these grand,
I like that,
sweeping regime change, we've proven that, at various points, the political leadership has proven maybe somewhat mercurial in exactly what comes next in a lot of these places.
That's very true. We are bringing tens of thousands of refugees to our country, and some of them want to assimilate and want to be here and are happy, and others want things to be exactly the way it was in their homeland. They want to live under Sharia law. They want all women to cover. They want to be judged in a Sharia court, not under our Constitution. And each refugee, and I've done my research on this, costs the government just under $20,000. Then this refugee is immediately eligible for food stamps, welfare, and many other manners of public assistance. What's your take on that?
So are a lot of Americans that are living here, and I'd say
True.
Everything you just described applies to some people that already live here. And I wouldn't say that that's most refugees. I'd say that's probably the small minority of people that come with that attitude. I think many, at least. I mean, have you spoken to many refugees? I
have actually. I haven't been able to get any to come on air yet. I actually visited 4 refugee camps in the past. I actually did some overseas travel and visited 4 refugee camps over in Europe while I was doing the travel. And okay. I wasn't able to get any on air. And some of them just, like, we don't like it here. We don't want to live under their laws. We just want to go home. We just can't. Some of them were, I want a new start. I mean, it was a mixed bag. It really was. So, yes, I actually have. Surprise.
That's good. Yeah, I would urge people to look at data and empirical evidence because this is such an emotional issue.
I will admit that was, I probably spoke to maybe 40, 50 people. It's a very small sample, and it was not an empirical data. But there is evidence of things that, like what's going on in Europe with, there's zones where the police don't even want to go because, the Muslims have, or a certain specific ethnic group, whichever ethnic group it is, as they said, it's a no-go zone and they will attack. And there's been a rampant spate of sexual assaults over there and people saying, well, all women should cover up, otherwise I'm going to rape them. And yes, I have actually seen those quotes from interviews on BBC television and things like that. And they're actually having to put out cartoon-like, awareness videos to some of these people because they don't speak a language that the Europeans speak. So,
sure, I think there's a lot of challenges associated with bringing in refugees anytime you've got a situation like Syria. So that's certainly at the policy level something that not only policymakers and government officials need to look at, but researchers as well. And I think the broader citizenry to make sure everybody educates themselves on exactly what's going on.
That's true. I think I caught you off guard when I said, yes, I have actually spoken to refugees. I had some business travel come up, and I took advantage of it.
No, you didn't catch me off guard at all. I was just curious because you seem to have a pretty strong opinion, so I almost assumed that you must have visited refugees to have such a strong opinion. You seem like you know a lot about it, so no, that's not surprising to me.
I actually do try and do my research most of the time. You're a political scientist by background. What do you think of the Brexit? Or aren't you up on European, just out of curiosity while we're finishing up the first half of the show?
It caught me off guard, I think, because I had been following the polls, and I thought, again, I'm a Middle East person,
right.
training, but it did. I wasn't expecting it, and so I think there's numerous security implications for the Brexit. Chief among them, what does the future of EU foreign and security policy look like? How does this make things with NATO different? And does this actually change Moscow's outlook? Right. So does Putin see this as a sign of disunity within the broader EU, and attempt to translate that into more aggressive Russian posturing on the near abroad?
Right. Now, do you think the Brexit will have any impact on NATO?
I'm sorry, I think you cut out there.
Do you think the Brexit will have any impact on NATO?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could, right? At least in the short term. It would seem that there could be, more of an onus on NATO. I think it's still yet to be seen how this wrinkle in relations will be between longstanding allies, and so how the French and the Germans will now view the Brits. I think there certainly could be.
All right, kind of getting back to Turkey and the terrorist attack. Turkey is a member of NATO, correct?
Correct.
Okay. NATO doesn't cover attacks of, terrorism attacks, do they? defined as
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I believe it's Article 5, attack against one is an attack against all. In other words, could they, if they can figure out who did this, could they pick up the phone and call NATO and say, this is the group that did this, come help us wipe them off the face of the earth?
Yeah, I'm not sure it works exactly like that, but could the Turks invoke Article 5 in response to an attack? I think it would depend. I mean, here you're getting into the difference between state versus non-state actors, and so it gets a little bit murkier. Right. Anytime you're dealing with a non-state actor where individuals are, swearing allegiance to a group, they don't wear uniforms. I mean, it's the whole Al-Qaeda conundrum.
Right. Now, if it had been like Russian
ISIS.
Planes bombing Turkey, that would be a clear-cut...
Totally different, sure.
Okay.
Totally different situation, because there you're dealing with a state actor, which is, defined under the laws of armed combat. There's a lot more of a precedent for dealing with state-based actors.
Do you think the world needs to, groups like NATO and even the United States Congress and Department of Defense need to start re-examining their definition of who is a combatant, and not just base, and things like the Geneva Convention? Because right now, because they don't wear uniforms, terrorists are not technically afforded the protections of the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, I mean, I think since 2001, a lot of that's been re-examined. It's just slow in the making. Anytime you're dealing with large government bureaucracies and lawyers, things are not going to work fast. And so, as we've seen with Guantanamo, these are things that are likely to take a very long time. Maybe some would have thought it would have happened sooner than 15 years, but here we are, still kind of trudging along, trying to find a shared definition. And look, a lot of people don't even agree on the definition of terrorism in and of itself, and so that gives you a sense of why some of this is highly problematic and extremely difficult.
Right. You brought up Guantanamo. What do you think of President Obama releasing a number of detainees, and now there was one that's actually gone missing, and he's sending them to various countries around the world? And what about the lengthy wait for trials for the few that are being brought up on charges?
I don't want to speak out of ignorance. I've got to admit I referenced Guantanamo, but it's not something that I'm actually up on and current on.
That's fine. I can respect that entirely.
I don't want to speak out of turn.
I can respect that entirely. I don't think when we started capturing these people overall, putting them in Guantanamo, we expected them to be there 10 to 15 years later. I will say that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think there was much thought given to it other than getting folks off the battlefield, and certainly it's proved to be a slow go. Yes,
it has. So, do you think anybody will claim that unfortunately, the horrific attack in Turkey?
Tough to say. I mean, if ISIS did come out and claim the attack, it wouldn't surprise me. But again, it also could have been Kurdish militants, and so again, I don't like to speculate when it comes to these things, because it's easy to be wrong, especially when you're trying to make predictions about the Middle East. That's a fool's errand, in my opinion. And so right now I'm trying to sit back, gather the information, gather the facts as they continue to come in, and form an educated opinion. But either way, I think I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm not a betting man, although I think the smart money from the analysts that I've been following is that a lot of fingers are pointing to ISIS.
I was going to say, from what I know of the Kurds, they tend to shy away from suicide bombing. They'll plant a bomb in a parked car and blow it up in front of a police station, but they don't do as much martyrdom, for lack of a term, because correct me if I'm wrong, aren't the majority of the Kurds Christian?
Kurds are Sunni.
Sunni Muslim? Okay.
But you're right in that we haven't seen the Kurds conducting as many suicide attacks as Salafi jihadi groups, although there have been instances where Kurdish terrorists have conducted suicide attacks. So that was one thing I was trying to point out yesterday on Twitter, saying to folks, look, because it was a suicide attack doesn't automatically rule out the Kurds. There's a great book by Robert Pape, political scientist at the University of Chicago, called Dying to Win, where he looks at various groups and goes through the history of suicide bombing and talks quite a bit and talks at length about the Tamil Tigers, who are obviously not a Muslim group, but were one of the pioneering groups in the use of suicide tactics and used it to a quite effective degree and, in fact, killed several heads of state through the use of suicide commandos.
All right. Well, I thank you very much for joining me. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. In fact, we're just a little bit past it. Would you like to give out any social media or contact information where people can find you or follow you?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Colin P. Clark, COLINP. Very much for having me.
You broke up a little bit there. Would you care to repeat that just one more time?
Sure. It's at Colin P. Clark, COLINP, CLARKE.
All right. And I would definitely love to have you back for a Saturday segment so we can discuss the formation of Israel and the Sunni-Shia rift in better detail, because I know some of it, but I don't know as much as you do.
Sure. I'd love to rejoin you at some time.
All right, well, I'm going to ask all of you out there to hang on with me while I go pay some bills. Yes, we are going to those beloved commercial breaks.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
For writers and public personalities, it's becoming increasingly important to have an online presence. This normally takes the form of a website and social media. However, things like a cluttered site or broken links can scare potential readers away. It's time to get a health check. Until the 30th of June, Black Wolf Editorial Services is offering a special website health check package. Get a new bio for your site. Have the site navigation and general layout assessed. Get a review of your Twitter activities. Get an objective opinion about your public Facebook page. Find out what works well and what could potentially scare your readers away. And all this for $35. At the end of the day, the face we put online will be the one that most people will see. Let us help you put your best foot forward. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For full details and a list of other services, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050.
800-610-9050.
Hey, this is Dave Bray, America's Patriotic Rocker. Just giving you a shout out. Make sure you stay tuned and listen in to K98 Talk.
All right. Thank you for hanging in there with me over the commercial break. Now, I felt my interview earlier this week with Superior Court Judge Gray was so worthwhile. You're getting it again. All right. Let's take a listen.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote. Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
For writers and public personalities, it's becoming increasingly important to have an online presence. This normally takes the form of a website and social media. However, things like a cluttered site or broken links can scare potential readers away. It's time to get a health check. Until the 30th of June, Black Wolf Editorial Services is offering a special website health check package. Get a new bio for your site. Have the site navigation and general layout assessed. Get a review of your Twitter activities. Get an objective opinion about your public Facebook page. Find out what works well and what could potentially scare your readers away. And all this for $35. At the end of the day, the face we put online will be the one that most people will see. Let us help you put your best foot forward. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For full details and a list of other services, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark. The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View. All right, this is Jessie. I'm so happy to be back with you guys. Sorry I kind of missed a couple days. I had some stuff come up, and I'm sorry I've been saying that a lot to you lately, but I thank you for hanging in there with me. I got something special for you today. Boy, do I. We've had a lot of Supreme Court decisions come down the past few days because it's end of the Supreme Court term. And we've had a lot going on with things like Brexit and stuff like that. Not to mention U.S. politics, which, I usually don't talk too much about. But I have an interview I recorded this morning. No, Judge Gray couldn't be with me live, but he's a retired Superior Court judge from Orange County, California. And I'm going to let you listen to my conversation with him. And we're probably going to run long because I got some other things to say. But after the interview, I'll come back and we'll take a commercial break. So hang in there with me and let's take a listen to my interview with Judge Gray. Nope. I wanted to bring somebody in who could talk more knowledgeably than I could about all these Supreme Court decisions that have been coming down. So I have a retired Supreme Court judge from Orange County, California, Judge Gray, on with me today. How you doing today, Judge?
Oh, Jesse, life is good, but actually you just gave me quite a promotion. It's the Superior Court, not the Supreme Court.
Oh,
in New
sorry.
York, the Supreme Court is actually the trial court, but in California it's the Superior Court. So you don't have to bow down quite so low to me. I'm not on the Supreme Court, just the Superior Court.
Hey, I'm glad you caught it. So
nice to be with you.
Oh, I'm happy to have you. I always like to find experts when it comes to things that are so far outside my area of expertise.
Well,
right.
Jesse, the longer I live, the more I believe that there's no expert anywhere about anything. But I am conversant on it, at least, and there are certainly some interesting things going on.
Well, there were three topics I really wanted to focus on. I wanted to talk about the immigration decision. I wanted to talk about the fact that police don't need a warrant for drunk driving tests. And how is the fact that the United States Supreme Court is being affected by the fact that there's 8 justices, not 9? So
well, which do you want to discuss first? Because I'm primed and ready on any of those.
I'll let you take those in any order you want.
Okay. Well, look, I believe that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and with regard to the various separation of powers, it states very directly that the president can appoint for vacancies in any federal court, and certainly the Supreme Court is there. It does not say that the president must do it immediately. It does say that the Senate must confirm before someone appointed can take the position, but it does not expressly say that they have to do it right away. But I read it that, look, coming back and saying we're not even going to give hearings for anyone that this particular president appoints, I believe is a mockery of their obligations. They're not required to approve anyone. They can use their own even political decisions on that, although I think that's a bit disgusting too. But it is incumbent upon the Senate to look at and consider the president's appointments. And last time I looked, at this moment, President Barack Obama is president. And although I don't agree with Mr. Obama on a lot of things, and honestly, I would not approve or confirm this particular appointment because I think we can do better. But I'm just really disgusted that the Senate, even before Obama issued an appointment, the Senate said in effect that they weren't going to consider anybody. And I think that's an abrogation of responsibility. So other than that, no opinions at all, but that is my opinion.
You think the holdup is basically because the Senate's not even willing to talk to this nominee.
That's exactly right. They've said that. They will not, before he was even nominated, they said no matter who President Obama appoints, we're not going to give them a hearing. And I just think that that is yet another example of this polarization going on within all of our government in Washington that is just an abrogation of their responsibility. I think it's really, really disgusting.
Okay. Now, what about this one about drunk driving, and don't they need a warrant for searches and to compel you to do stuff? How do they get around that with drunk driving?
Well, they say, and I'm mostly familiar with California because that's where I'm from, but of course this is a national issue,
right.
And the Supreme Court, of course, is national. The distinction in California and in most states is that this is not an obligation, that is, or a right, a property right that's being taken away from people, the ability to drive a car. It's a license. And so as a condition of having that license, you must submit to a police officer's request/demand that you participate in some form of a breathalyzer or urine analysis or blood test. You are not required to go through what they call the FSTs, the field sobriety test. You can decline those, at least in California. But if you decline to take a breathalyzer, you can lose your license. And in fact, you probably will have your license suspended immediately for 6 months by the Department of Motor Vehicles without even having a hearing. You can have a hearing to go back and try to get it back, which in a lot of ways in California, as one defense attorney said, is talking to the hearing officer is kind of like talking to your ashtray. But that is the way that these things have developed. It's because it's a privilege and not a right. So that you can go to court, and if the police officer didn't have any articulable suspicion that caused you to be pulled over, you can have that turned over. But even it's not clear, even if he did it on a whim, for example, the Department of Motor Vehicles, if you refused the breathalyzer, still, for the reasons I stated, because it's a privilege, not a right, they could actually still suspend your license. I don't believe it. I think it's a fiction that should not be held forward. But you do understand, of course, that there is a kind of a clear and present danger if people are out on the highway inebriated, and that's certainly not something anyone wants to do. But the rule of law is kind of breaking down. But I've given you the reason for it. It's a privilege and not a right.
I used to have a driver's license in New Jersey many, many years ago, and I did check. In New Jersey, when you get your license and you sign it, you are also saying what they call the implied consent law, which says that you are required to submit to a breathalyzer or other blood alcohol tests. Now, obviously, I'm not a good candidate for field sobriety tests. So,
well, again, they can even, in California and I believe nationwide, set up roadblocks and actually have administrative stops where everybody coming through, they can look at them, look at their eyes, talk to them, and see if at that point they have an articulable suspicion that they've been driving or drinking and driving. These are encroachments on our civil liberties. You gave the rationale just like I did. It's a consent issue because it's a privilege and not a right. So as a condition of getting that privilege of getting your driver's license, you must submit to this test. And that's pretty well been affirmed all the way around by every court pretty much that I have seen. And now, of course, the United States Supreme Court has done this as well. So it's a done deal. It's a closed issue. Like it or not, at least I'm comfortable with the fact that it does directly affect our security on the highway. So some liberties, I guess, are taken with our liberties, but that's the reason for it. And there are a lot of things to fight in this world. That's probably not the highest one on my list, as long as it's not done arbitrarily. and that's always a risk, of course, that to give people power, it tends to get abused, Jesse, as you very well know. I'm a libertarian, and I'm very concerned about that. More and more people should be concerned about that the government continues to encroach on our liberties. I'm going to go off the subject a little bit, but you know, the Britain leaving the European Union was in effect that Brexit was almost literally a comment that we are just fed up with unelected bureaucrats who are non-responsive to us, and they're from Brussels, and we're here in England, and they are controlling our lives, and we have nothing to say about it. And that is a question of liberty, and they took that step. And in a lot of ways, I applaud it. They do know that there's going to be some financial repercussions. There are going to be some financial problems brought upon Britain for that, but they did it anyway. I'm not sure I would have voted that way, but they did it as a step to regaining their liberty and local control of their lives. And to that degree, I certainly applaud it.
I have to say that your timing is great because Brexit's the other key issue for my show tonight. So you weren't that far off topic.
Well, you got a free plug-in out of there. You have to pay me double now.
All right. Now while there was an abortion decision, the judge and I both kind of agreed it's been litigated until the cows come home. It's not going anywhere. We're not talking about it, right, Judge?
Jesse, that not only the cows have come home, they're asleep and tucked into bed. It's just been hashed to death. It's become such an emotional thing instead of legal thing. And you have an awful lot of people around the country that are just playing on people's emotions for their political advantage, and I've had enough of it.
Right, and I'm not a fan of discussing that topic anyway, so we're going to move on to the other one that I see as a big one, the immigration decision, which since the court was divided, going back to our first discussion, they basically were tied 4-4, and so basically the lower court's decision was upheld.
That's right. That's what happens administratively if, in fact, that happens to be the circumstance. You know, it's a multifaceted issue. I'm going to go back and talk about Governor Gary Johnson for a minute because he is the Libertarian candidate for president. I was his running mate for vice president in 2012, and he came out with a proposal that is just really good. Namely, we should, as a country, give work visas to people very liberally. If they can come to our country, they can support themselves. Bless them. They should be able to come in here legally. If they can support their family, they should be able to bring the family too. But no welfare attached. And
I can agree with that. And
most people would, Jesse. And after, of course, having a background check, a serious, significant background check regarding criminal justice issues, mental health issues, and certainly terrorism issues. But otherwise, let them come in. So that's substantively what I believe. And there are people here already, and yes, they've been here for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And some of them have children that are citizens because they were born here. And are we thinking of deporting them, Donald Trump notwithstanding? And the answer is no. It's for practical reasons, for philosophical reasons, for humane reasons. The answer is no. They can get work visas as long as they're here and they can support themselves and they can stay and pursue the American dream. If they can't, then they may have to go elsewhere. But okay, that's where I believe substantively on the issue. But that's not what the case before the Supreme Court was about. That was a question of separation of powers, and you had a circumstance in which Mr. Obama decided to flex his executive muscles and change the law. And you can't do that. It's a fundamental threat to the rule of law, Jesse, in which he was saying he was going to change the law that required people to be deported, and he simply said he wasn't going to do it. That is an abrogation of his responsibilities. Now, we all know, and I've been a judge and I've been a federal prosecutor, we all know that people have discretion, and you can't enforce every technical violation or really every violation of the law. So there is some discretion
no case would
on
ever
whether
get
you're
through
going
the courts.
Well, and that's right. When I was a federal prosecutor, we had a guideline that even though it was a violation of federal law for anybody to possess any marijuana, unless they had at least a ton of it, we weren't going to deem that to be a federal offense just because we didn't have the resources. So that's a statement, but then it still would be a violation of state law maybe. So obviously you need discretion, but this is well beyond exercising his discretion at a on the ground level. This was a statement on high from the President of the United States saying he was not going to enforce the law. He interpreted it and chose to change it, and that's a legislative act that was being a usurpation by the executive and the Supreme Court. Well, they're all outcome determinative, and that's not the rule of law either. People are, of course, screaming out, "Oh, I'm going to be deported. This is terrible." And I agree with them, but that's not what the case was about. The case was about, does the president have the power to pass laws and change those laws unilaterally? And the Court of Appeal below the Supreme Court, I think, got it right. And the Supreme Court basically came out 4 votes for humaneness, in effect, and 4 votes for upholding the rule of law. And I think that the end result was the correct one procedurally. Substantively, we should go to Governor Johnson's approach. And unfortunately and politically, I can prove to you and our listeners here that the Democrats and Republicans do not want to change the present law. The present immigration system has failed. We are harming millions of people, and unnecessarily, but we have many, many very powerful Republicans that love the idea of the cheap labor brought in by people here that are undocumented, and they don't want to change it. And we have a lot of Democrats, although they give lip service to changing it, love the idea of all these people coming into the country eventually voting for Democrats. So they give lip service to change. They don't want to change it either. And I can prove to you that that's true, because had they wanted to change, they would have done it decades ago. They just don't want to. Governor Gary Johnson, Governor Bill Weld, the 2 Libertarian candidates for president and vice president, would change the law for everyone's benefit except those high-ranking Republican business people that want the cheap labor and those high-ranking Democratic people that want all these votes. And it's crass. Vote for Governor Gary Johnson and Governor Bill Weld. Other than that, I don't have any opinion on the subject whatsoever.
I will say that I do have a somewhat related question. What about the refugees that Obama is saying we will take in? First of all, I've done some research on this. Every refugee costs the taxpayers outright about $20,000. Then, once their application is processed, they are immediately eligible for welfare, food stamps, housing support, free medical care under Obamacare, which is a whole other can of worms. Feel free to comment on it if you'd like. What do you think about the fact that Obama's like, oh, we're going to bring Middle Eastern refugees here?
You know, unfortunate. You can't be a human being and close your eyes to the people that are suffering greatly, for example, in Syria, Libya, and the Middle East. You have to be sympathetic with that. And I have blood in my veins, and I care about people. I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people. Having said that, let's be realistic also. I really admire the sentiment from Germany. You know, Jessie, that Germany took in 1 million refugees from Syria last year, and I admire the sentiment. It's a flat-out mistake. You cannot bring people with such a divergence of culture and language and religion and customs. It's not going to work. It's going to result in all kinds of problems. So with regard to Syria, of course, the United States, to go back a little bit, destabilized the whole area. We started with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. We didn't have al-Qaeda in, say what you will about Saddam Hussein, who did certainly some bad things, but al-Qaeda wasn't there. ISIS didn't even exist, because we went in and destabilized it, and now we're having to pay the piper. What you should do instead in Syria, for example, take a corner of Syria, patrol it, protect it and allow the refugees to stay there in Syria. Yes, it will cost some money. I think that money should be spent by the United Nations and by the various other countries, particularly us, because we helped destabilize the area to begin with. By the way, if you remember, the only good thing that came out of our invasion of Iraq was that Muammar Gaddafi in Libya gave up his nuclear weapons. You know,
right.
That was the only good thing I can think of. What happened as a result of that? We took him out and killed him. You know, what does that say to people that want to cooperate with the United States? So now Libya is in turmoil as well because of these destabilizations. So, but go to those countries, find a 10 square mile, 20 square mile area that you can patrol, and then help people stay there until the country finally settles down, and then they can go back to their regular lives wherever they came from. But we cannot bring those people, at least large numbers of those people, to our country or to Britain. Again, you get into the Brexit where they saw that, they were losing control of their borders. And we love people to come to America. We have a history of people coming to America to live the American dream, but they're supposed to want to become Americans, not to want to be Syrians living in America or people from other countries. We invite them to come in, bring in your poor and your huddled masses, but to some degree that's got to change. We have to be realistic, and we want only people that want to become Americans and not people living here carrying on, their other lives and their other languages and their other values, not wanting to become Americans. So it's complicated. What is it that the store that says, if you broke it, it's yours? We have broken it from the Middle East, and to some degree we are responsible to try to pick up the pieces.
My opinion on the whole thing, not that you asked, I agree with you on finding a place over in the Middle East to keep them and helping us helping take care of them. Now, do you know that there was actually a Sharia court set up in Texas? Thankfully, Texas said this is not constitutional, this is not legal, and this can't happen.
There is no way at all that people coming into our country should have the ability to change our system. They're going to come to the United States to become Americans, to live within the American system, to thrive, but bringing in other laws and other customs of that kind, if you think that we're going to allow mercy killings or, anything else that goes with that, the answer is categorically no. So Texas was right.
Now, insofar as language, hey, you want to teach your kids the language of your homeland and speak it at home so they can be bilingual? Go for it, but learn English too.
Because we care about you. You will never be a mainline citizen of the United States unless you learn English. However, I quarrel with a lot of my friends from Vietnam or from other countries, Mexico. They do not teach their native language to their children, and that's a shame, just for the reasons you stated. But look what, for example, being with two languages has done for Quebec, for Canada. It's divisive. It's a mistake. We need to have English be the first language, not because we're superior and because we're looking down at other people, but because we want them to be in the mainstream. We're doing them a favor to help them and encourage them to speak English, and their children as well. That's exactly the way we care about people. That's what should happen.
Like I said, if you want to have your holidays and things like that, no problem. Now, back to the court thing. I don't know if you know. Well, you said the Sharia court was wrong and it was struck down. Now, there is sort of a Jewish court system in this country, but it deals with one thing only: Jewish divorce documents and conversions.
Well, Jessie, if you are a part of some form of religion, as long as it doesn't have binding punitive effects in our country, and you voluntarily choose to be a Mormon or be Jewish or Hindu or whatever, and you want to abide by the regulations of that religion, fine, bless you. It's a freedom of religion issue. But if you're going to get into criminal issues, the answer is no. And I don't care what religion we're talking about. It is the criminal justice issues for our states, and they don't change just because you don't agree with them. You can try to change the laws within our system, but our system, however, should not require a Jewish temple to perform a marriage, or any other religion to perform a marriage that is not consistent with their religion. That's their choice, and they should not be forced to do that. You can get into gay marriage if you want to. If you're whatever church, the Catholic Church, doesn't sanctify or believe in gay marriage, they should not be required to perform that ceremony. Of course, the state has no business whatsoever telling people that they cannot get a marriage license, in my opinion, for those various reasons. But it's really important to differentiate state activity on the one hand as opposed to individual or private groups, religious or otherwise, on the other. And that's just the difference.
The only reason I brought up the Jewish divorce court, one, yes, I am Jewish. And two, I saw an article that was saying, well, if the Sharia court can't exist in Texas to try everything, then the Jews shouldn't have their little Jewish document divorce court. It's
just different. That's just not the same thing. And you see, just like I was trying to say earlier, if you're Jewish, happen to be Jewish, and you want to get a divorce, and you live in the state of California, the California laws apply. Now, if the Jews or the Catholics or whomever decide that, okay, we're going to banish you from, or whatever it would be, the Catholics used to do this, that you could not get a divorce, and if you did, you'd be banned from the Catholic Church. That's their choice. And the Jews, if that's what they decide to do, I'm not familiar with what it is, but if they have their own rules about divorce within their church circles, they're welcome to enforce them. But you can still get a divorce under the state laws, regardless of what your religion happens to be. Again, that's a distinction. It's like if you're a Democrat, you should be able to choose your Democratic nominees. The Republicans shouldn't be able to reach in and choose who your Democratic club members are going to be, for example. It just depends whether it's voluntary association or whether it is required by law. And that's a distinction that I'm very comfortable with.
And all they do with the Jewish thing, there's a Jewish marriage contract written in Hebrew, and it's very beautiful. It's actually a piece of artwork that you hang on your wall as well. And basically what they do is they declare that document null and void. That's all the Jewish court does. After you go talk to a rabbi and fill out some paperwork, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's a divorce in the eyes of Judaism. And you actually have to
completely entitled.
Your legal
They're completely
divorce
entitled. That's
first.
Completely consistent with the laws of our country, and that's fine. By the way, as a judge, I've performed several marriage ceremonies for Jews, and I've had them break the glass, and I've actually said things in Yiddish that I was giving my notes phonetically. I didn't really know what I was saying, but they didn't laugh when I said it. I think that's wonderful. That is a nation of diverse people and customs and beliefs, and that's what America is. As long as we want to be Americans when we're here, and then now we've circled back. But I think that is perfectly appropriate within the Jewish community if that's what they want to do voluntarily, and they're completely able to do that. As long as they don't stone somebody for getting divorced, that's a different issue.
Nope. Basically they just say, all right, that ketubah, which is what the Jewish marriage contract is called, is no longer valid. Have a nice day.
Well, I have a great admiration for the Jewish religion. It's well grounded in so many ways, and I think that it not only merits courtesy, it merits respect.
Well, thank you. No, but like I said, I agree with you in the fact that we shouldn't be taking in people who don't want to assimilate to our way of life. And I may be Jewish, But if you look at, I can't show it to you because we're not on webcam, but if you look at my Jewish marriage contract, my ketubah, I had one custom made. It's very simple. It's got a American flag on the left, an Israeli flag on the right, and a little ribbon around it. And I consider myself an American first, but I will say if I ever had to leave this country, I would go to Israel.
Bless you. Of course.
But,
and that's perfectly appropriate. However, I'm married to a woman that was from Canada, and she now has dual citizenship. If I were king, and King James has kind of a heritage and a ring to it that hasn't caught on, but I would not allow for the United States anyone to have dual citizenship once they turn 21. They're going to have to choose. I hope they choose to be an American, but if not, you're not going to have a dual citizenship. So I believe my wife should choose, and she can choose whichever way she goes. I think it would be an American, but I think it's important to be an American, and if you are, you should not be a citizen of another country.
That's interesting. I have one friend who's dual New Zealand U.S. and another friend who's actually tri-citizen, U.S., Mexican, Israeli.
Okay. Well, not in my country. So don't vote for Jim Gray for king, because that's what I would do.
But, here's the thing. They all have assimilated to where they're living, and they view the country they live in as their first country.
I'm not arguing with any of that. I just feel that you're either an American or you're not. We have a special country. I'm right now writing, I've written a musical before, but I'm writing a second one. It's on the Constitutional Convention. So I'm really heavily into the Founding Fathers and what the fights that they were having and discussions and beliefs. And I happen to think that they would probably take up arms against where our government is now, because it's just treading on our civil liberties. And the first primary responsibility of government, according to the Founding Fathers, was to protect individual liberties. And look, of course, what's happening today. It was also, of course, for security and the rest of that. But it's really important for the Founding Fathers that we protect our civil liberties, to allow people to live and let live. In fact, Thomas Jefferson is the ultimate libertarian. And he had a wonderful saying that was, I don't care if you worship one God, 20 gods, or no God. It doesn't pick my pocket, and it doesn't break my leg. And just think of that for a moment. Live and let live. And if you choose to worship in whatever fashion you wish, it doesn't have any adverse effect on me. You should be able to live your life as an adult as you choose, as long as it doesn't have a harmful or irresponsible effect on my ability to do the same thing. So we need to get back to that. It isn't a question of government dictating what your health care will be, for example. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the government, the federal government, the right to do anything of the kind. And I can circle back a little bit. It's kind of like we're going to choose to have our local Department of Motor Vehicles run our health care system, and that's what's increasingly happening today. The answer is no. Does that mean that I don't care about people and care if you're healthy or not? No. For people that cannot afford it, I think we should have a safety net voluntarily, so that we should give, on a sliding scale, a voucher to people that are a poor economic class that they can use to purchase health insurance on the private market. But otherwise, get the government out of our lives. Same thing with education. Jessie, who is in a better position to decide where and how your children should be educated? You as the parent or the government? And I've never had anyone say it's anyone other than the parent. So empower the parents to choose where their government money is going to be spent to the education of their children, and then they can go to a public school of their choice, or a private school, or a military school, even a religious school, vocational school. And it's not a question of the government spending money for religious schools, because it's the parents that are spending that money, just like with Veterans Administration benefits. It's the vet that's choosing to go to Sisters of Mercy College or whatever. That would bring competition into the schools. We have to make a decision as a country. What is the purpose of our educational system? Number one is to educate our children. What a concept. Or number two is to protect below-average teachers. And guess what we're doing today?
Protecting below-average teachers.
Precisely. Most of those are shunted off into the lower economic areas where you find a lot of blacks and a lot of Hispanic children, and they are the areas in which our schools are failing our children, and it's obscene. If the parents could choose where that government money would be spent, they would demand excellence. And you know what, Jesse? They would receive it. Governor Gary Johnson came out for that while he was governor of New Mexico, for heaven's sake, and stands for choice by the parents to choose where that government money is going to be spent. We will bring excellence to every school that within 5 years of when we employ this system. And it's exciting, and in the meantime, it's obscene.
I think there should be one and only one government mandate about education. Okay? Every person who graduates high school should be able to read, write, and perform daily math needed for daily life. That's it. Otherwise, get out.
There need to be some, and good for you. There need to be some guidelines. We do need to focus on reading, writing, arithmetic instead of, focusing on religious tenets or something. But, Germany is extremely successful in putting in vocational schools. Not everybody needs to have a PhD in economics or sociology. And if you want to be a jet mechanic or jet engine mechanic, that sort of thing, and the parents are in the best position to do that, it will help our people and our country immeasurably and get away from these failing schools. So, I agree. There should be some standards, of course, but otherwise get the government out of education. There's nothing in our Constitution whatsoever that allows the federal government to be there. We should repeal or do away with the Department of Education, and that's not a radical concept. We went for a long time until President Jimmy Carter without having a Department of Education, and our schools were a lot better off before it came in there.
I happen to agree with you, but like I said, my whole thing is to graduate high school, and I have actually met someone who had a high school diploma who was functionally illiterate and couldn't add past double-digit math.
Jesse, when I was at UCLA, we had a very well-known and excellent linebacker on our football team who was absolutely incompetent. He couldn't read or write, and it was just outrageous, but he'd been carried through because of his football talents. A lot of those things are changing, but they must change. We must simply put down the gauntlet that we will eschew mediocrity, which is one of my favorite sayings. We don't put up with mediocrity in ourselves, in our children, in our employees, and our government. We will strive for excellence in education, and the best way of doing that is getting the politics out and allowing the parents to choose where that money is going to be spent. And by the way, yes, there's some parents that are not as able, not as interested, but if I'm not, as a parent, I'm not so interested in my children's education, but my children play with your children, and you are interested, and you're deciding to take your children out of this underperforming school, my kids are going to clamor that I want to go with Jesse's children, so there'll be a coattail effect. It works. It's working now in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's starting to work in Indiana and in Florida and in New Orleans. It's the way to go. It is bringing back excellence, particularly in the lower economic areas in our school system, and I stand on that. Vote for Governor Gary Johnson for president as a libertarian. We will bring that home.
All right. Now, I'm going to make this clear to my listeners. I'd offered you the chance to give out your website for your business, but you said you'd rather give out Governor Gary Johnson's. So go for it, Judge Gray.
Well, thank you. And you can Google Governor Gary Johnson. His website is Governor Gary Johnson for 2016. But you just look into it. In fact, do yourselves a favor. It's fun, it's interesting, it's insightful. Go to the website isidewith.com. the letter I isidewith.com. They will ask you something like 25 to 30 questions, political questions, and you also weight them as to how important these are to you, and it crosses the board. Then you poke the submit button, and it will digest them and within about 30 seconds show you which presidential candidate is closest to your political philosophy. I actually did it a while ago, and the top 3 in the 90% were the 3 then libertarian candidates, but Jesse, you'd never imagine who came in next. Came in fourth, 69% was Bernie Sanders. Now, if you take away all the financial things, because we don't believe in giving free stuff to people except for that safety net that I tried to discuss, but otherwise, on so many other areas, Bernie Sanders and we are together. No crony capitalism, which means you don't have the government giving out favors to their little political cronies and monies and stuff. You don't bail out Wall Street completely together.
K-Street wouldn't be happy with you.
Well, that doesn't bother me whatsoever. You know, the military adventurism where we go in, put our troops in destabilizing areas of the world. Bernie Sanders and we agree with regard to marriage equality. You know, we see it as a constitutional issue. So does Bernie Sanders. First it was racial equality, then gender equality, and now it's marriage equality. We stand for that. The Republicans and Democrats don't. Bernie Sanders does. So, good. At any rate, one way or the other, and you might find it to be interesting, you will look at Governor Gary Johnson, Governor Bill Weld, never a hint of scandal throughout their professional lives, throughout their political lives, private lives, as opposed, of course, to the Democratic candidate. They were Republican governors in Democratic states. They had to get along with and work with people of different political philosophies. They're not bullies like the candidate from the Republican Party. They work well with people. Will put in a coalition government of, yes, libertarians and independents, but also Republicans and Democrats, assuming that they agree with our fundamental approach, which is the mainstream of American political policy today, which is financial responsibility, social acceptance, and liberty. And that's where most voters are. That's where we are. It's not where the Democrat or Republicans are. I don't even think Hillary Clinton knows, for example, where Hillary Clinton believes on gay marriage. You know, she's gone all around on every free trade. She'll
Waffles,
say whatever
anyone?
she needs to say. You know, that's right. So look into Governor Gary Johnson, Governor Bill Weld for libertarian candidates for president and vice president. I'm convinced you'll be proud of what you see, and you will support them and be proud of that vote. So that's what Judge Jim Gray thinks. I was the libertarian candidate for vice president in 2012.
That one of my other hosts said, in fact, Nick Sarwark said it on his interview with Rick Robinson on America Off the Rails a few days ago. He said it's like we're being asked to choose between Voldemort and Sauron.
That's pretty close to right. You know, it's a very discouraging choice. It's a perfect storm for us as libertarians. It could not be better to have those two candidates, but it's scary for the country.
It is very
Jesse,
scary.
This calendar year, I've traveled a lot. I've gone to Vietnam. I've gone to Egypt. I've gone to Italy. I've been stopped in the streets by Vietnamese, Egyptians, and Italians. They're looking at me because I obviously look American. Is the United States seriously considering voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton for president? I mean, is that the choices we're going to have to face? They're very worried, and they have a right to be worried. Governor Gary Johnson is the one that's going to bring us home.
Well, I personally have said on air before, and I will tell you this, I cannot cast my vote for either Hillary or Donald Trump. So the obvious choice for me is Governor Gary Johnson. Now, down ticket, I have one guiding principle. Where is liberty's safest place? And
good choice.
Well, actually, I didn't first say it. My favorite author, Brad Thor, did. And he has spoken out against both Hillary and Trump. And this is a man who depends on people to buy his books. And he is a multi-time New York Times #1 best-selling author. And he had the guts and the courage to speak his mind during this election year with a book about to be released.
Good for him. We need more courage, Jesse. And thank you for what you're doing. I tell people Governor Gary Johnson, while he was a sitting governor of New Mexico, 1999, came out against our nation's marijuana laws. He had no political constituency. He got into all kinds of political trouble. It's what he believed. You can agree or disagree, although more and more people are agreeing now, but don't you want a president that has some morals, some scruples, some standards, and principles? And that's what Governor Gary Johnson does. I'm completely sold on him. I believe he's the strongest, best, most qualified person to be president I know of. So I'd quarrel with you a little bit. Don't vote against someone. Have the comfort to vote for somebody. And you can vote for Governor Gary Johnson and feel real good about it. You know, you can vote for the lesser of two evils and you still kind of get evil. But let's vote for somebody this time. Get us in the presidential debates. You know, if any of your listeners get called by pollsters, tell them I support Governor Gary Johnson. If he gets 15% in 5 national polls, he'll be a part of the final presidential debates. It will be a revolution in itself and make those two radical candidates from the Democrats and Republicans at least come back more toward the middle. And that's where we are. We're in the mainstream of American political thought today. So thanks for the opportunity of sharing these thoughts. And
no
Jessie,
problem. It was a pleasure having you on. All right, so that was my interview with the judge. It was a very worthwhile 43 minutes, I thought. Now, we do have to pay some bills, so we're going to take a quick commercial break. But before I go to commercial, I do want to remind you, and this is valid for anyone, you don't have to be a writer to use this offer. My friend Judy L. Moore, who runs Black Wolf Editorial, is doing what she calls a website health check. If you are a public personality or you are out there on social media and you are trying to develop a platform, she will do what she calls a website health check. She'll look at your website, your Facebook, and your Twitter and make sure they're all working together and that you aren't doing things that make your tweets really hard to follow. Did you know that if you send a message from Facebook and have it go to Twitter, it shows up as a link? Yeah, that's the kind of stuff she checks for, and she's doing it for $35. All right, let's pay those bills.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls? Start saving thousands in interest and fees and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
All right. Thank you for hanging in there with me over that commercial break. All right. I have at least one, maybe two more topics I want to touch on. I know I've kept you longer than usual. Well, I will soon, because we are coming up on top of the hour. Thankfully, I don't have anybody on my heels, so I can take some extra time, even though it's a weekday. All right. China. Yes, China is my first foreign story, not Brexit. We'll get there. China ended all communication with Taiwan. The Chinese government said on Saturday it has stopped communication mechanism with Taiwan because of the refusal of the self-ruled island's new government to recognize the One China principle. It's the latest show of tension between the two. China regards Taiwan as a wayward province, as is deeply suspicious of Taiwan. President Tsai Ing-wen, who took office last month, as they suspect, she will push for formal independence. Oh yeah, this is news. And I'm willing to bet you haven't heard it today, because I sure hadn't. I went looking. China insists that she recognized something called the 1992 consensus reached between China's Communist Party and Taiwan's then-ruling nationalists, under which both agree there is only one China, with each having their own interpretation of what that means. In a brief statement carried by the official Chinese news agency, China's Taiwan Affairs Office said that since May 20, when Tsai took office, Taiwan has not affirmed this consensus. Because the Taiwan side has not acknowledged the 1992 consensus, the joint political basis for showing the One China principle, the cross-Taiwan Strait contact and communication mechanism has already been stopped. This announcement came, and listen to this carefully, as Taiwan expressed anger at Cambodia's deportation of 25 Chinese nationals wanted on fraud charges to China, ignoring attempts by Taiwanese officials to have them returned to the island. Taipei has accused Beijing of kidnapping, when other countries such as Kenya and Malaysia have deported Taiwanese to China, also in fraud cases. Now, if you remember my interview with Lily Tang Williams, and if you didn't hear it, go check it out. She said that oftentimes they will use fraud charges in order to convict someone. It is the government's way of saying, you were bad, fraud, convict, problem. Now, Chinese government does any number of things. I'm not sure what the punishment is, but yeah. So how many of these fraud charges are legitimately fraud, and how many are, we don't like you? I don't like any of this. So, now, this article is a couple days old. It came out on Saturday, June 25th, but I thought it was worth sharing. Now, Taiwan is about... Yeah, I know. You're going to say, wait a minute, shouldn't that say North Korea? No. Taiwan is about to test fire its newest anti-missile system for the first time in the United States next month, as relations with rival China deteriorate. Oh yeah, I just said Taiwan. The test of the US-3-made Patriot Advanced Capability, PAC-3 system, will be launched at the White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico in early July, according to a Defense Ministry source. A move likely to irk Beijing, even though it was arranged for before Tsai took the helm. According to the source, the test will be conducted in the U.S. to avoid China collecting information about it, and due to space restrictions in Taiwan. The American Institute in Taiwan, the de facto U.S. Embassy, would not comment on the test, which is also reported in Taiwan's Liberty newspaper. Despite having no official diplomatic ties after recognizing Beijing in 1979, the U.S. is still Taiwan's greatest ally and main arms supporter. Yeah. The missile system was purchased in 2008, well before the current president's leadership, and the test was approved by the U.S. last year. Taiwan bought 3 earlier model PAC-2 systems in the 1990s and also tested them in the U.S. They were then deployed in the densely populated Greater Taipei area. It then bought the new PAC-3, a system designed to intercept incoming ballistic missiles near the end of their trajectory, as part of a $6.5 billion, yes, I said billion with a B, arms sale by the U.S. in 2008, which infuriated Beijing at the time. Come on. The system is already partly operational and will shield Taipei as well as central Taichung and southern Kaohsiung from any Chinese missile attacks, according to the Defense Ministry. The Taiwanese missile unit involved in the July drill will fire 2 missiles to intercept a missile launched by the U.S. military, which simulates an incoming Chinese ballistic missile. Japan has also tested the PAC-3 on U.S. soil. So, guys, this isn't groundbreaking that they're testing the weapon on U.S. soil. What I think is interesting is that the U.S. is going to China. Yeah, so we're going to let them do it. China still insists Taiwan is part of their territory, awaiting reunification by force if necessary, even though the two sides split apart in 1949. According to Taiwan's defense ministry, there are 1,500 Chinese missiles aimed at the island. China launched ballistic missiles into waters off Taiwan in 1995 and 96 in an attempt to deter voters in the island's first democratic presidential election. Okay. This ain't cool. Now, I do have an audio clip. And let me just double check one thing on that audio clip before I play it. Yes, it was 11 hours ago. I wanted to double check before I gave you what could be bad information. So, let's take a listen.
Taiwanese President Ma Ying-jeou says he wants to improve cross-strait relations with China as he departs for a historic meeting with President Xi Jinping in Singapore on Saturday. Speaking to media in Taipei, Ma said he hopes to establish a way for Taiwanese and Chinese leaders to keep channels of communication open in the future. Xi, who is already in Singapore, has not divulged much information on the talks since his arrival on Friday from an official visit to Vietnam. During his speech at the National University of Singapore, he says China has always advocated that the dispute in the South China Sea should be resolved peacefully through dialogue. Both sides will hold news conferences after the meeting later on Saturday. However, no agreements are expected from both sides during the meeting.
For riders and public
All right,
personalities,
sorry.
it's becoming
All right, sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. Trying to stop one and start another. All right, so the president is meeting with China. They're trying to calm this down, but did I mention the world's gone a little wacky lately? So, all right. You know, have I ever gone a broadcast without mentioning North Korea or Iran? Today's no exception. Sorry. All right. North Korea says its missile test is a success and is a threat to the U.S. All right, and this is from a small website out of Tokyo, Gadget and Technology News. All right. Japan on Thursday began examining the suspected nose cone of a North Korea rocket that washed up on a Japanese beach, hoping to glean information on the reclusive state's ballistic missile program. After it test launched 2 more missiles. The first of the 2 missiles was considered to be a failure. The second missile managed to reach an altitude of about 620 miles in the direction of Japan before plunging into the sea 250 miles from North Korea. The test fire was claimed to be... Hang on, I just lost my place. The test fire was claimed to be a success without putting the security of neighboring nations at risk. All right. The launches appear to be a response to the U.S. and South Korea's military drills completed in the spring. Guys, the U.S.-South Korea drills are an annual event. While they are interestingly newsworthy, they ain't that newsworthy. I've actually visited them. They're interesting, but yeah, they're not that newsworthy. Chow Sun-hui, Deputy Director General of the North American Business Affairs Bureau in Pyongyang's Foreign Ministry, said in Beijing, "For now, we have no thoughts about taking part in talks to discuss the DPRK's denuclearization." Translation, we ain't talking about getting rid of our nukes. That's what North Korea said. KCNA, that's the official news agency for North Korea, said that the missile had been fired at a high angle to simulate its full range, and it reached a maximum height of more than 1,400 kilometers. Japan wants the Council to send a powerful message to North Korea speedily. Besho said that although he did not mention when such a message would be released, soon after the launch, South Korea's major government offices strongly condemned North Korea, while the White House also criticized Pyongyang's action as a flagrant violation of their world obligations. Yeah. I've said before, I'll say it again. North Korea, along with Iran, they are bad actors on the world stage. I mean, come on. Alright. I've got an Iran story, but there's no missile in it. There's oil, but no missile. Alright, I'm just getting it to pull up here. Alright. The first of Iran's new oil and gas investment contracts for international companies will be launched this summer and will invite bids to develop 10 to 15 oil fields. Oil Minister Bijan Zange was quoted by the SHANA news agency. The Iran Petroleum Contract, IPC, is a cornerstone of the country's plan to raise crude production to the pre-sanctions level of 4 million barrels per day. And the OPEC member desperately needs $2 billion in foreign money to reach the goal. Its launch had been postponed several times as hardline rivals of the pragmatic President Hassan Rouhani resisted any deal that could end a buyback system dating back more than 20 years, over which foreign firms have been banned from booking reserves or taking an equity stakes in Iranian companies. Zenga said the final draft for the contracts will be approved by the government shortly after some amendments to appease both critics and foreign companies. Some of the critics were accusing us of treason. We could not have a discussion with them. The other group raised some issues on the model of the contract, and we held meetings with them, said Zenga. Zenga said that the contracts were amended to enable Iran to develop oil and gas fields either through a buyback system or other methods. He did not elaborate. All right, like I said, no missile in this one. I know I'm running along. I know, but I feel like I've got 2 more stories I have to touch on. I can't leave them alone. Sorry, guys. Hang in. Hopefully you find it as interesting as I do. This one is Al-Qaeda. In the Inspire Guide magazine, aka Al-Qaeda's magazine, Al-Qaeda told jihadis, target white Americans to avoid minorities, because the U.S. mislabels attacks as hate crimes. Yeah, they said that. AQAP, Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula, has published a guide urging jihadis to carry out more lone wolf operations in the U.S., following the deadly terror attack in Orlando earlier this month, and to set their targets on the sights on the targeting of white Americans. The publication, the Inspire Guide, Orlando Operation, which seeks to capitalize on the terror attack carried out by gunman Omar Mateen, who pledged allegiance to ISIS, plainly encourages extremists to attack Americans. While Mateen chose to target what the guide refers to as homosexual nightclub, not noting that killing gay people is the most binding duty and closer to human nature, it suggests avoiding targeted places and crowds where minorities are generally found in America, because the federal government will be the one taking full responsibility. This refers to the heated debate sparked in the U.S. in the aftermath of the Orlando shooting by media and law enforcement and legislators debating the roles that gun laws, hate crimes, and terror each played a part in the incident. Instead, the guide divides jihadis to target areas where Anglo-Saxon communities generally concentrated. This class of the American community is the majority and is the one that is in the American leadership. Wait, if Anglo-Saxons are in the leadership, don't we have an African-American president? Or, quote-unquote, a black man for president? All right, anyway, I digress. The document, published specifically with a targeted message against Americans, was released in addition to the group's periodical Inspire magazine, which often exploits terror attacks in the West and makes threats against Europe and the United States. Yeah, they do publish a regular magazine. No, I'm not on the mailing list. No, I don't want to be on the mailing list. Could be interesting reading. As the Islamic State has gained notoriety with its jihadis launching local attacks in western places such as Brussels, San Bernardino, Garland, Texas, and most recently Orlando, Al-Qaeda has long been attempting to play catch-up in staying relevant and competing against other jihadis groups for both recruits and funding. Yes, it is a PR war even among jihadis. Didn't know PR played a role in jihad, did you? It does. They both want to be king of the hill or king of the cemetery. I don't know which. Personally, I'd like to put them in the cemetery. But, you know. In the guide, the Orlando attack is referred to as the most successful lone jihad operations and will undoubtedly inspire others to wage similar operations. In conclusion, the authors note that while Mateen killed and injured almost a third of attendees at the nightclub at an extremely high tally for a lone wolf, he could have even killed more by taking of explosives if he followed the simple guides that appear in the previous editions of the group's Inspire magazine. Oh my God. No, I'm not going to read the bomb instructions. Sorry. I don't believe in doing that. So, you want to find bomb instructions? You're on your own. So, yeah. I mean, yeah, they have a newspaper. It's kind of weird. But it's true. Alright, I am pulling up, you should see my web browser. I've got one more story I gotta touch on. I just can't let it go. I just can't. You know me. Sometimes I can't let something go. Promise I'll have you out of here by bottom of the hour, probably even a few minutes before that. Just gotta get this article pulled. CIA arms for Syrian rebels supplied the black market. Oh yeah. Amman, Jordan. Weapons shipped into Jordan by the Central Intelligence Agency and Saudi Arabia intended for Syrian rebels have been systematically stolen by Jordanian intelligence operatives and sold to arms merchants on the black market, according to American and Jordanian officials. Some of the stolen weapons were used in a shooting in November that killed 2 Americans and 3 others at a police training facility in Amman. FBI officials believe after months of investigating the attack, according to people familiar with the investigation, the existence of the weapons theft, which ended only months ago after complaints by the American and Saudi governments, is being reported for the first time after a joint investigation by the New York Times and Al Jazeera. That's what a free press does. They don't back down. The theft involved millions of dollars of weapons. It highlights the messy and unplanned consequences of programs to arm and train rebels. The kind of program that the CIA and Pentagon have conducted for decades, even after the Obama administration had hoped to keep the training program in Jordan under tight control. Come on. Who are we kidding? The Jordanian officers who were part of a scheme reaped a windfall from the weapon sales, using the money to buy expensive SUVs, iPhones, and other luxury items, according to Jordanian officials. The theft and resale of the arms, including Kalashnikov assault rifles, mortars, and rocket-propelled grenades, have led to a flood of new weapons available on the black market. Investigators do not know what became of most of them, but a disparate collection of groups, including criminal networks, rural Jordanian tribes, use the arms bazaars to build their arsenals. Weapons smugglers could also buy weapons in the arms bazaar to ship outside the country. The FBI investigation into the Amman shooting run by the Bureau's Washington field office is continuing, but American and Jordanian officials say the investigators believe that the weapons used to gun down 2 American contractors and 2 Jordanians and 1 from South Africa had originally arrived in Jordan intended for the Syria rebel training program. I mean, come on. This is just getting nuts. The CIA representatives of both the CIA and FBI declined to comment. The State Department did not address the allegations directly, but a spokesman said America's relationship with Jordan remains solid. The United States deeply values the long history of cooperation and friendship with Jordan, said John Kirby, the spokesman. We are committed to the security of Jordan and to partnering closely with Jordan to meet common security challenges. If that ain't a mouthful of hot air. All right. I thank you for hanging in with me. I know I went long, but I thought that interview was too good to save, not to mention timely. So, with that, I'm out of here! See you tomorrow!